Hi, this is Charu,
And this is Hannah.
and welcome to episode 3, A Whole New World. Today, we will be talking all about going into college and the differences we found from high school into college. Hold on tight to your magic carpet as we dive deep.
Woo! All right, so last week we talked about our experiences. Oh, wait, not last week, last week. There we go. We talked about our experiences through high school. So this week we wanted to focus more on our transition into college and how that is like and the differences that we've have noticed between the two. So I guess to start off, I think this is a big question too, is what are some things that you wished you have known before applying to college and entering into college, or what you already knew going into college?
Yeah, so I think you and I had a lot of the same thoughts on this. So we apologize in advance if we repeat any of the same things. But I think one of the biggest things that my parents and even like other friends really instilled in me was that it really doesn't make a huge difference as to where you go for your undergrad. Like if you're able to go to an Ivy League school or like a very top well-known school in your country, great, good for you. But that doesn't have to be a prerequisite into the things that you are applying for.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to not go to a very popular college. It's okay to go to a smaller college. You're, it's up to you to make the most of whatever college experience that place brings you.
Mm-hmm.
And it really doesn't affect you in the long run. Like 30 years from now, no one's really going to ask you, hey, where did you get your bachelor's degree from? Because no one really cares.
Yeah.
After a certain point, all that matters is the work experience or just the
Mm-hmm.
experiences that you've had afterwards when you're in whatever field that you want to be.
Yeah.
So don't get hung up on, oh, I need to get into XYZ because these are the best schools in the nation or in the state.
Yeah.
Take it slow, take it at what you can um, one afford, and just really think about what you want out of a college and
Mm-hmm.
don't let yourself be hung up on the name.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you said experience, how like your experience is more important and like going out into, I guess, the real world when you're going like into your job and getting experience through that. A quote always, just hearing the word experience, like a quote from the show I watched, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, always like pops up. It's in my books, experience outranks everything. And like to that point, it's true. Like it's okay if you didn't go to a big name because no one did, like 10 years down the road, no one will care, to put it harshly.
Yeah, and you're right. Like experience does take precedence over everything because you could go to a like a big name school, but not take not make the most of it and like kind of accept that, oh, I'm here now, that's all that really mattered. But you
Mm-hmm.
want to really put the next however many years into full use and take out everything that you want to get from that college education. And
Yeah.
that's something that not many people tell you in high school, especially when you go to a very competitive high school like we did.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the students are more focused on going to these big popular colleges that have a very well-known name to them.
Yeah.
And I know I had a few friends that when I was discussing what colleges they applied to, they were like, "Oh, we didn't apply to this one college because like I knew that I was going to get in and it's too easy and XYZ." And I'm like, "That's fine. And
Mm-hmm.
if you feel like it's not going to be challenging enough, that's fine. But when you just dismiss it as like an entire university,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't rub off very nicely. And I had a couple
Yeah.
people like do that when I was like, oh yeah, I applied to this one. They were like, oh, I didn't because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, but it's still a good university.
Yeah.
And now that I'm here at the university, like I'm glad that this is where I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate the experiences that I'm getting out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going off that point, it kind of relates to how one thing that I realized or that I knew while, or that I had, wait, that I knew when applying to college is like, don't just follow where your friends are going. Don't follow the crowd. Don't follow the most popular choice. Because the same university or college that your friends are going to, or the majority of people are going to, they probably won't offer the same experiences and opportunities for you as an individual as it will for your friends or your classmates. So it's very different, and people have different callings to where they're supposed to be and do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's a good point because I know that when I was looking at different colleges to apply to, I was obviously considering one of the more popular schools in our state. And but I made the choice to go and visit that particular campus, which is another point that I wanted to bring up during this question was if you have the ability to go visit your campus or visit a potential future campus, go do that. I know it's difficult with the pandemic and a lot of colleges aren't offering those campus tours, but to those who are listening in the very, very far future, once all of this is over, if you have that option, go visit the campus because that can really help you in your decision making because you want to feel like you're going to fit into this campus. So with my experience, I knew that a lot of my friends were applying to this. I was like, okay, if this is such a good school, let me go check it out. I went there and I absolutely hated that campus because
Yeah.
I just knew that I would not fit in. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to save myself $70 and not apply.
There you
In
go.
my head, I was like, I know that even if I get in, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll just use that $75 to treat myself to something else and not spend it on applications. So yes, it's important to look at your different options and see where you see what colleges will offer you what you want, but it's okay to remove one from your list if you feel like you're not going to fit in. If you know that even if you get in, you're not going, to me, I wouldn't spend that money applying. I would save that money and use it for something else. And I was glad that I did that. I only applied to one university, and that's the university that I'm at right now. And so to me, I was like, if I don't like a college campus, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And like Hannah was saying, lots of people will have, even your friends will have different callings, and there's really no point in just following after them because at this point, it's your life that you need to be thinking about. And it doesn't make any sense to try to mold your life around someone else's. You have to mold your own life for yourself.
Yeah.
So think about what it is that you want and look for colleges that will give you that.
Yeah. And I think on the same topic of friends, I think one thing that I wish I knew before going into college is how the dynamics of friendships that you think will be the same throughout the years will actually be changing. Especially if we are all at different points of our lives. And we're still all on different points of, or different parts of our journey of life.
Yeah.
even though we're the same age, like it's still very different. And I think that's one of the big things that I wish I knew, that there will be a lot of changes, and to be ready for change and to be open to learn and grow from those changes. Um, yeah, I think that's one thing that caught me off guard,
Mm,
is how many changes that I needed to accept and let go.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, like with expectations, it's so different. Like your expectations um, of high school is so different from what your expectations should be for college, or the reality of college is. And I think that's one big thing that I never realized until like 2 years into college. It's just like I never expected this much change. Yes, I
Hmm.
knew there would be a change. Like I
Right.
knew that there were gonna be changes, but
Yeah.
not this much. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think as high school graduate, like as we were graduating high school, I know we all wanted to keep that same set of friends that we wanted to be, lifelong besties with. But eventually we all grow at different paces. And like you said, we're all on different paths and at different points in our lives,
Mhm.
that it just doesn't always work out, and that's okay. Some you will keep,
Yeah.
others you will slowly drift apart,
Yeah.
and some you will drift apart from, but when you text them back, or when you text them at some point, it'll be like you guys never moved or separated from each other. It'll be old,
Hmm.
just like the old days.
Yeah.
And that has something that I have experienced several times, and not just going into college, because I think having moved when I was younger, like I had my set group of friends when I was in like elementary school, and then I moved to India for 2 years,
Hmm.
and that like turned my whole world upside down, because like this is an entirely new place. I don't know how I'm going to make friends, and I wanted to keep those friends that I already had,
Mm.
but now thinking about it, and like whenever I'm talking to my friends that I had in California, it's almost always like we never left, that
Mm.
we still just kind of grew up together, even though we have not really. I think the last time I saw them was 7 years ago. But when I talked to them, like I talked to one of them a couple months ago, and it was like, oh, hey, we can still have conversations for 2 hours, like we never left.
Yeah.
So you really never know what's going to happen, and it's
Yeah.
okay for that.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another point where you don't have to have everything figured out.
Yeah.
It's okay if you don't know what major you're going to apply for. It's okay if you don't know what schools you want to go to. It's it's okay. It's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Um, if you have things figured out, good for you. If you don't, that's okay. You still have some time to explore and really try to see what it is that is your calling.
Yeah.
Um, I know that I was lucky to have an idea of what I wanted to do,
Me
and
too.
to have parents who also like were able to guide me
Mm.
into really consolidating what path would lead me to where I want to be.
Mm.
Um, I know that my goal was eventually, for a long while, it was to become a doctor, and then I switched to going more into the grad school research route. And I was still debating, like I hadn't completely figured it out. I was still like that inkling of wanting to be like a medical doctor was still in the back of my head. And sometimes it still is even today. But my parents were like, okay, if you are still unsure about this, go this route and see where it leads you.
Mm-hmm.
And having that guidance really helped. Not everyone has that, and I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's that just means that you'll take a little bit extra time trying to figure that out, and that's okay.
Yeah. Like for me, like I didn't even know what I wanted to major in until I think it was while I was applying. I think I only applied to 2 schools under the same major that I am now, and then like 3 or 4 other schools under a different major that I thought I was going to be going into, but there's well, many reasons I didn't go into that major particularly, but I didn't figure it out until during the application process.
Yeah.
And that was just through my experience through my clinical rotations program. Like I've brought this up plenty of times, I feel like, but yeah, I think it's okay if you don't have those experiences that shape what you want just yet in high school, because a lot of high schools don't give those opportunities for students to get to experience what they like or experience what they're passionate about.
Right.
And a lot of times students don't really know, even when they get into college. Like I have a lot of friends who don't actually know what they're going to be doing with their major,
Mhm.
or are unsure if they're even in the right major. So
Yeah.
it's okay, because it would seem like everybody would want you to have things figured out already, but it's okay if you don't. Just
Right.
because some other people have it figured out, they probably might not actually have it figured out, but they might have it figured out. Who knows? But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that you need to have it figured out too.
Right.
Yeah.
I think another thing you briefly mentioned, the application season. I think that's one thing that we should maybe talk about a
Ooh,
little
yeah.
bit. So when it comes to college apps, obviously for most colleges, those are going to fall in your fall semester of your senior year. But I would highly recommend, one, to look at all of the deadlines to the schools that you're applying to and be aware of them, because I think the official deadline for any college is like December 1st for one of the application things. I think early application, final application, I'm not really sure. But look at the deadlines and start working on your essays and any supplemental material that you need
Mm-hmm.
prior to the application deadline. Like give yourself good amount of time, because you're going to want to write several drafts. You are going to want to have several people look over it that you trust will give you a good input that doesn't take away from your voice.
Yeah.
And you want to have that time to do that, because your senior year of high school, it's going to be stressful depending on the classes that you're taking. And on top of that, you will have your college applications,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to be bogged down because of all of it. So take that summer, really start trying to, even if you don't have complete essay drafts, at least bullet point out what you want to write about.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least think about what could be possible things that you can say to really portray yourself through a narrative essay, because that is what college apps are. They're a narrative essay based on a certain prompt that you are given. So take that time, think about it, put together a vague resume, because it'll help you when you're trying to really pick the things that you want to discuss. And always try to apply early. Like, in the sense, don't wait until the application deadline date, because you don't know what's going to happen to the system, because everyone is probably waiting until that December 1st or whenever the application is due. So try to, finish all of your things and have your application submitted
Mm-hmm.
a few days or a week or two in advance, so you're not worried about it not going through. I think we'll also touch on this a little bit, but scholarships are also something that you want to look into, because, I mean, college is expensive, to put it lightly.
Yes.
So trying to make the most out of any scholarships that your university offers, if they do, or third-party websites or companies that do student scholarships. Those are things that you want to really consider to help ease that financial burden that may come forth in your college career. Sorry, I rambled there for a bit.
No, you're good. For me, it's just more of I kind of forgotten the application process because that was 3.5, almost 4 years ago. And whoa, it's almost been 4 years. Holy moly. Oh, okay. We're getting old. I still remember senior year vividly almost. But yeah, I don't really remember the application process besides me deciding my major and me having to pick where I was going to go for college.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it besides or I think one point is take this with a grain of salt, or it's said a lot where college isn't necessary for everyone and college isn't a thing for everyone, which is there's some truth in there because there's a lot of successful people who haven't gone to college, but yeah,
every job or vocation has its own set of needs, and not everything requires a college education. So if whatever industry you want to get into in the future doesn't need it, then you don't have to go to college. There's no one's forcing you to go to university. And you don't have to go to university right after you graduate high school. You can take a gap year too. It's up to you where you are in your life, and it's up to you to make that decision for yourself and not base it on what everyone around you is doing.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, at this point, it's your life that you need to be worried about, that you need to be thinking about. And it's not the time to be looking around you and saying, oh, my friends are doing this, so I guess I should do the same thing, because you may not be ready for that, or you may not need it at all. And it's important to really think about what it is that you want. So I think those are some things that we wish we had known before applying and entering into college. And I think we wanted to next talk about some of the big differences that we noticed between high school and college.
Yeah, I mean, based on the title itself, it is a whole new world where there are sometimes new and sometimes fantastic point of views. But yeah, there's just this huge difference that a lot of people don't necessarily tell you, or not a lot of people. I mean, it's hard to put it to words because you can't see the difference until you experience it yourself, because some people it might not be that different, or it'll be different in different ways, but on the lines of point of views, I think this one's the most apparent one, where going to college or university changes your point of view on a lot of different things. And that just comes from different experiences and being given more opportunities to see more things and be a part of different things. Like, you have more of that opportunity to think for yourself, and that comes with growing up. Like, no matter how old you get or as you grow up, you have to think for yourself. You can't have someone always holding your hand telling you to do all these things. And yeah.
On that note of thinking for yourself, like, college is going to be a time where you can ask those questions that you normally wouldn't be given the chance to ask in high school, or even if you ask those questions, you may not always find the answers in high school because it may be like out of the scope of the class or something like that. But college is where you can really think about those type of things and really question them for yourself and bring up those questions in class discussions or even like outside of class when you're talking with your friends. You can have more, doesn't always have to be this, but you can have more intellectual conversations because people in your classes, not all, but some will be at the same mindset or the same level of thought as you are. And those conversations really will help you see what's out there in a different way. So I think for me, a lot of professors and my peers and classmates all brought a different point of view to the table. And at the same time, it's important to take these things with a grain of salt because you want to be able to justify whatever they're saying for yourself before you fully accept it. Because I know there have been like people who are almost in like a mentor position who I want to blindly believe because they are, to me, more experienced, more knowledgeable. But it dawns on me later that, oh, some of the things that they say don't really align with what I have read and thought. So there's like that clash that one you have to accept, but also you need to remember that, okay, you have a brain of your own and it's up to you to use it. And that's a hard lesson because we have always been told that, oh, when someone older than you is telling you something, they are usually right. That's not always the case. And that's something that college and like especially the past year has really taught me. And it's really important to question things.
Yeah.
Is another thing. Question what you're being told.
Yeah. And I think, oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think with college, you get to ask yourself more of the hard questions and also see more of the world around you instead of for me, I think in high school, I wouldn't say I was sheltered because I've had different opportunities for me to see the different issues and the different things happening around the world, or I guess happening around me. But I think with college, once we're more independent, we have more opportunities where we can experience the world, as in see different issues and see the different things that are happening in the world and around us. Yeah.
And I think also with college, you're given the option to take a wide variety of classes in several topics that aren't just within your major. You can take classes from any major of interest, and you can attend different seminars and different talks that the professors are having or that any guest lecturers will have, and explore those difficult topics that you don't always come across. And in high school, you're very limited, I feel, to what classes you can take because a lot of high schools, at least in the States, have that specific curriculum. Like, okay, you have to have X many years of English or government. But now in college, like I haven't yet been given, or that's a lie. I have taken classes in areas that I have just been interested in. The past semester, I took a course it was a readings course on topics related to the addicted brain. I was interested in learning more about addiction, so I took the class and I learned so much about it that it's opened my eyes to a whole world of people going through a different type of pain that I didn't really know about before. I knew that addictions were a thing. I knew that it affected people, but to what extent and how much there is that is lacking for them when it comes to just institutionally as well as a person who is going through that. And I would not have been given that opportunity to take that type of class in high school.
Yeah.
But now I can, and I'm very grateful that we have those type of options.
Yeah.
And so you will find that your opinions on things change, your perspectives on things change,
Mm-hmm.
and the way you feel about certain things will also change. You'll feel more, at least I personally have started feeling more frustrated at things just because like some of the basic things seem to just not be there. And that's something that I've really started feeling in the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
With the classes that I've been taking, I'm feeling more and more agitated that things aren't the way that they should be. And that's like a very new emotion or perspective for me because all this while I was like, yeah, the world is great. It's really not. That really hit
Yeah.
me. So,
I think, sorry,
you're good. Go ahead.
I interrupt.
No.
Okay. You can cut out all the like, oh, sorry to interrupt.
Oh my gosh, you're good. No, I'll keep all of it in.
Oh no.
Save myself some time.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, but I think like what you're talking about, like with college versus high school, like college professors bring in life, like bringing the real world into class and into topics and discussing topics because that's what we're going into. We're going into the real world after we graduate, right? But in high school, the teachers don't necessarily bring in the real world because we're not being necessarily taught the real world yet. It's just more of just those concepts that the state thinks we need to know.
Right.
And not talking about the issues and the important questions that we should know, but those aren't even brought up until college because yeah.
And again, we're not blaming the high school teachers for not doing this because also high schoolers, most high schoolers, I don't think at that stage in their life are ready to have these type of discussions.
Yeah.
So, and I think being in college, you're right. They are trying to prepare you for the real world. And so good professors will try to bring in those discussions into the classroom and have the students really debate these things. But in high school, that might be something that you have to really go looking for. It's not going to be readily available to you. If it is, that's amazing. But it may not always be.
Yeah, like I didn't mean to say like I do like oh my goodness, I like advocate for teachers so much because I understand how much teachers matter and how much they do for us as students, especially in the public school system or in the school system, public, private, whatever it is.
Right.
But they do so much and they are so underpaid and
I know.
Yeah, and I feel like we probably will touch upon this on a different episode on all the different things in the educational system, but like we love our teachers.
Yes.
No matter like experience-wise, like we still love our teachers because they're the sense of the real world that we get to experience.
Yeah.
Are part of the real world that we get to experience.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that like it's their fault because it's totally not because it's just the curriculum that doesn't give them the opportunity for them to talk about these things.
Right.
Yeah. And I think in high school, I think I would care about these questions and these issues, but I don't think I wouldn't say immature, but I guess immature brain or still, I mean, I'm still learning and growing, but back then when I still had more learning and growing, but wait, I still have a lot of learning and growing to do now.
No,
but back then I don't think I would have like care so much about those things as we do now.
Right. We
Yeah.
would have processed them differently because
Yeah.
now we see it. I think I would say that I was more naive to things in
Yeah,
high
me
school,
too.
and I didn't I wasn't really exposed to these things at home
Mm,
where my parents never really discussed um, what was wrong with the world,
mm,
basically. And like, that's fine. I didn't really mind that. But now I wish that we had more of those conversations where I was more um, involved in learning about the um, things that needed to be improved upon or some of the injustices that were happening.
mm,
Um, and that innocence, in a sense, I guess,
mhm.
really, I don't want to say it prevented, like I just never went out seeking these things.
Yeah.
I never went out of my way to look up like I didn't ever go into more detail on the things that
Mhm.
I was learning about,
Yeah.
um, or the current events that were happening. But
Mhm.
now I feel that to want to keep up with the discussions happening in classes
Mhm.
and with the peers, and two, to just really understand what is happening around me. Like I am more willing to learn about the world outside of my little bubble now.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
don't think I was like that in high school. In high school, I was more focused on me and my little bubble and where
Mm.
I'm going. But now mm, I'm one. I'm still working towards this, but wanting to be more open to the different things happening around me.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, quarantine has been a good time for that because nothing else is really
Mm.
happening. I've been at home all day.
Mm.
You know, like this has been a good time for me to really um, read up on things, look up things, really understand what's going on in the world.
Mhm.
Slightly, there's a lot that's going on, but I
Yeah.
haven't, you know, but the
Yeah.
little bits here and there, it's been good. And I think at this stage, as juniors in college, like I think it's a good time for that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think one view is that I think in high school it is just more along the lines of, even though if I do know these things, it's harder for us to speak out because we aren't like, people don't see us as,
Real adults,
yeah, or experienced
yeah.
enough until like once you reach 18, or like 18, that's the voting age too, right? Like
Hmm.
that's when you get to make your decisions on
Yeah.
big world things, right?
Hmm.
But before then, you're just like, you don't think about these things. Like, honestly, I didn't think about like issues and um, stances and where I fall on things, or where I stand on things as much as I do now before I was 18. Like, I don't think I had those, like,
Yeah, those thoughts
yeah,
just didn't cross my mind
yeah.
before that. And I think it took me a little while. Like 18 didn't just turn me into a whole new personality.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
oh, this is where I stand on like these 10 issues.
Yeah, no.
But I get what you're saying. Like up until that age, we're not really thinking about these things because one,
Yeah.
we're not, no one's ever really told us these things. And we're also not at that, I don't think we're at that age to really understand the gravity
Mm,
of the issues
yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Um, and so as you grow, and again, this will happen just as you grow in general. It doesn't have to be because you go to college.
Hmm.
As you grow, you will realize what you start caring about, where your stances are on certain issues.
Hmm.
And
I think it ties back to when you said like that you've grown more frustrated with things going on around you, right?
yeah,
Like it connects very well because
yes,
yeah.
because you learn more about the issues happening, and
Mm-hmm.
if they're not aligning with what you think are, if they're not aligning with your beliefs, then yeah, you're going to get frustrated. And I think that is something that I appreciate having those feelings, even
Mm.
though it sometimes bogs me down.
Mm.
It's, I think it's sort of refreshing to know that I am maintaining that awareness
Mm-hmm.
of things happening around me, and that I see the issues,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's an inkling in me to want to make make this sounds so cheesy, but make the world a better place.
Yeah. I
Um,
think oh sorry.
Go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
I think with like when you're saying like frustrations and all that, I think it actually shows what you care. I've been reading this book, but it's saying how like your emotions are showing, or you have more strong emotions on what you care about. It shows what you care about. It shows what you believe. It shows where your perspectives are, or where your stances are. So your emotions point to that. And like that's what I realized too. Like I am more, what is the word I'm trying to look for?
You're more,
I think I'm more passionate,
oh,
and
yeah.
in that passion there's so many things fall, like frustrations or like my hopes and all these things. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
yeah, I don't even
Yeah.
know where I was going with that. Whoops.
That's the theme of our podcast today. We don't know what's happening.
Yeah, my brain is just woo.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's on new perspectives and point of views.
Yeah.
But I think another difference that we both probably faced is that making and keeping friends in college is a lot harder than you think it is.
Yeah.
Um, Personally, I think I touched on this. Either this was just in a conversation between you and I, or in our last episode, but it may have been just you and I. But I was talking about how entering college, our there's a good chunk of our high school that goes to our particular university, and I kept some of those friends, but at the same time, I made a set of new friends in my freshman year of college, and those are the same people that have been luckily able to maintain a friendship with, because we shared like a club together and all of those things. But apart from that, I have met people in every single one of my classes. I've become close to them over the semester. Once the semester ends, though, that's it. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that friendship just ended there, unless we ended up having a class together later in the future. So it became a point to where if I wanted to maintain a friendship, I would need to work towards maintaining that friendship. It wasn't as easy as, oh, we've got 7 classes together in one day.
Yeah.
I will make sure that I'm like sitting with you and doing homework with you, because we each have different schedules, different classes, different professors, um, different responsibilities, that having a break in a day where you're able to meet with each other every single day becomes very difficult, which
Mm-hmm.
makes maintaining friends a lot harder, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think for me, with with friendships in college versus high school, I think I didn't really have that too many close friends in high school, or from our high school in the first place. So I didn't really have that many connections going into our school. Um, but I've had like I'm still in contact with a lot of my friends from outside of school. Um, and I think with college, what happens is that in your freshman year, I mean, I think I can speak on this because I kind of experienced this, but it might not be the experience for everyone. But yeah, I think like what I'm about to say isn't probably I think it is a common thing, but it's not like it won't happen for everyone and all that. Yeah, for me, I'm not saying this pity party. Like this is not a pity party. This is just I'm just stating my experience and what I've noticed about college. With friendships in college, your freshman year is very important in forming those relationships because um once when you get into your sophomore, junior, and senior year, everybody is already in their own bubble. Then it's really hard to like get into I wouldn't say get into a bubble, but like get yourself
Mhm.
involved in in yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's more difficult and for me, I think that's what happened because in freshman year, like I was very open and very I wouldn't say desperate. I would say very like I was looking for new friends, right? And that's the case for
Mhm.
everyone. Everybody is trying to make friends in first year because very few people
Yeah.
know each other, right?
Mhm.
And I had made this group of friends and then I kind of like drifted away from them towards the end of freshman year, beginning of sophomore year.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, and one thing that I've also learned is that it's okay to be alone, and the alone is in quotes, but it's not in the sense of loneliness or living in isolation because we are relational beings and we're created to live in community. But I've learned that it's okay to not be constantly surrounded by people at all times, and that community doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot of people, and it can consist of a few people and a handful of people. Like, you don't have to have like 10 different people, 10 different close people, or like five different close, or like a group of people close to you. Like, we are relational beings and we are made to live in community, like I said before. Yeah, it's important to know and remember that it is important to live in community and to not build up walls. For me, I have like probably like four really close friends. And I've grown to realize that those like I've learned to learn how to cherish them, but know when to let go. Because I think that was also like I mentioned before, like learning like there's changes in dynamics of your friendships and all that, and like learning to like
Mhm.
that go. And I think that's something that I had to learn too. Um, and
Mm.
like yeah, it's okay like that you're not popular or that you're not like there's like so many there aren't that many people surrounding you because like
Yeah.
maybe the three or four people in your life that you are blessed with are the three or four people in your life that you are like you need at that time. You probably don't need like 10 other people.
Mhm.
But I think that's one
Yeah.
of the big things for me. Um, yeah, yeah. That's not a pity party. I'm just saying, like, that's a
Yeah.
lesson that I needed to learn and am still learning.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, especially with letting go. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I agree with that. Like you don't need to have a posse walking behind you everywhere you go. You know, it's I mean, not every single person that I've met I'm like close with. I have like I make acquaintances and sometimes those acquaintances develop into something more. And they're And like where am I going with this? Wow, my brain is tired.
It is midnight. Yeah.
It is midnight, yes. Like we said, this is a podcast of late night conversations. But yeah, you don't have to have like a group of friends with you all the time. It's also important to, I think, to learn to be alone and to allow yourself to have that alone time. Because I feel like that is when I personally have given, whenever I am alone, I allow myself to reflect a little bit more, I think, and to really think about what it is or who it is that I am, in a sense, because I feel like when you're with friends all the time, your friends' opinions and thoughts are also going to influence and shape you. And sometimes you may not have that room or space to grow into your own self. And I think I can't speak from complete like personal experience because I feel like all of my friends have been we've all allowed, like even as friends, we've all allowed ourselves to grow as people. But I can see how, like, depending on the dynamics of friendship that you have, where you kind of get shoved under because of someone else's thoughts, ideas, perspectives, or just personality in general. If they're very overbearing or overpowering, like there's a lot that can come into play in the between two friends that sometimes it's okay to be alone and it's not a bad thing, as long as you're able to find a small group of people. It doesn't even have to be in the same place. Like, I mean, I've got friends who are everywhere. They're not just at our university. To keep you in check, keep you grounded, and give you a safe space is all you really need. But try your best. It's okay if they don't stick, I think. Make those friends and then let them
I mean,
go.
if it is meant to not stick, then it won't. Right? And I think that's the reality of life, where people change and you can't hold on to what once was. Because people change, the world changes, life changes. We're not we're not constant, we are constantly changing, and that's the only constant we have. But
right.
And I think that's also something that is a big difference, is that you're more aware of these changes.
I think moving on from there, another big difference is the professors that you'll have in college and the dynamic that you will have with them. And I think it would be good to like combine another thing that we maybe wanted to talk about a little bit later on about how to choose your professors if you're ever given the choice to. But I think that so at least in our case, when we're choosing our schedules, we also have that option to choose our professors. And I think one piece of advice I'd give there is like read up on your professors before you sign up for a class with them. Use Google, use Rate My Professors, use whatever your school's evaluation system is to really determine whether they have the best ratings or not, because the professor really will make or break the class for you. I have had many experience with a bad professor, and these are for classes that I was genuinely excited to take. And once I took them with this professor, I absolutely hated the class. I still love the topic. I love the idea of the classes, but taking that class itself and the want to learn the material just like went down the drain. But the professor was not great, and the professors are really an important part. And I think another difference is that your classes will probably be like extremely large, so like 100 to 200 people if you're going to a bigger university, and approaching a professor becomes more difficult because there are so many students. And I think it's important that you take the time to go to office hours or set up meetings with them one-on-one if you're not able to make their office hours, because it will give you a chance for you to get to know them, for them to get to know you. And apart from the intention of just making a connection, also for slightly selfish reasons, that will help in the future when you're like applying for things and looking for recommendation letters and mostly recommendation letters, because they will really be able to give a good insight on who you are as a person.
The reason why I'm not speaking into this and why Charu is laughing is because I am not good at this. I literally have to apply for grad school soon.
Yeah,
and I am stressing about getting red letters and stressing because I did not form any connections with my professors, and I'm regretting that.
And it's not an easy thing to do. Like it took me a lot of courage I had to pluck up a lot of courage to go to a professor in the first place. And for me, office hours always just felt very unnecessary to me personally, because if I knew that if I had any questions, I could Google it and find those answers out to myself. And I didn't ever see the point of bothering a professor about it. So all of my interactions with the professor have almost always been either if I was taking their class during the semester, my interactions would have been on things that weren't necessarily related to that class. So I think one of my most vivid conversations was with my Gen Chem professor, and I think the first actual conversation I had with him was about Hamilton. That's not chemistry related at all, but that I think is like where I really started interacting with him. And he was obsessed with Diet Coke, so we had like a whole thing where like, one of us would bring him Diet Coke every now and then. And that carried on. Like after that semester ended, the next year I like went back to his office to like just visit him and say hi. And I ended up, trying to get life advice from him because I was stressed out about something. And just that's really how I developed that connection. And so, in other words, it doesn't always have to be about the class. You can bring up something. If there was something that was mentioned at the class that you're confused about, go talk to them about it. If not, find something maybe vaguely related to something they said in class that was interesting, or if you know that they're interested in something else, bring that up. And it's hard, I get it. But it is something that you need to at least attempt to work on, I think, to make life easier later.
Yes.
I'm not trying to like
no, it's okay.
Sorry.
No. I mean, it is a responsibility you take, and I just overlooked that responsibility, and yeah.
That's okay. And like, again, I have only developed this connection with one and now two professors. And I have had about 15 or more over the past 3 years. So it's really a challenging thing because not every professor is someone that you want to connect with in the first place. And not every professor gives you, or not every
It's easy to
professor
connect with.
is easy to connect with or is
Yeah.
easily approachable. So it takes a little bit more effort on our end as students to try to establish those connections because we know that we need it in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I just don't like forming connections for a self-gain. I think that's one hurdle that I need to take because it is a need for grad school. And I think a lot of professors understand that we do need rec letters to get into the things that we need to get into. But I think for me, I just hate the feeling of being making a connection with someone just so that I can get a rec letter or something and then not talk to them afterwards, right? And I feel as much as I need to do it to get into grad school, for me, it just doesn't feel right. And I think that's a unspoken thought of mine until now. Yeah.
No, I get that.
And I just feel really awkward doing it.
I think
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why even when we're entering university, they always tell you go to these office hours earlier on because as a freshman, that's okay. Because as a freshman in high school, as a freshman in college, you're not at that stage. Yeah, some of us are already thinking of where we want to go after the 4 years are up, but that's not what's in your mind at all times. So making those connections feel more, at least to me, they felt more genuine. So, and now I see that there are some benefits to it, but I would not recommend going and making connections just for the sake of rec letters. Make a connection to actually make a connection and maintain that connection. Because you don't want to make a connection your freshman year with a professor and then go back to them 3 years later and be like, hey, I was that one student in your class freshman year that asked you XYZ questions. Can you write me a rec letter? Because they're not going to remember you. They see hundreds of students every semester and they're not always keeping track of who you are. And so it's important to make that effort to keep yourself fresh in their minds. It's not just for the rec letters, I guess. I'm not saying to make connections only for the rec letters. You want to make those connections so that you have an not older perspective, but a different perspective than what your peers are bringing to you. Because in my experience, your professors really will bring a different view to the conversations. And that's not something that you'll always hear within the class itself. And also professors are just fun to talk to. After for that addictions class that I took, one of my friends and I, we had a one-on-one with her, or we had a group call with her, and we just spent the next hour and a half talking about the randomest things. And it was great that at the end of it, we all kind of begrudgingly had to end the call because we had been talking for an hour and a half and our professor had things to do. But we all were we should do this again because it was so much fun. And that's not something that you can get out of just attending class. I think it's also necessary to mention, this is going to be one of those podcast episodes where it's mostly
You're good. I'm covering my mic with my hands because there's so much noise happening around me right now. So
you're good. You're good. It is that quarantine homely feel that we're here for.
Lo-fi podcast. No, this is even lo-fi. Okay, continue. Sorry.
I think You're good. On the topic of quarantine, I think it's important to mention how much harder both making friends and approaching
Yeah.
teachers is different and difficult. Um, I think we'll also have another episode where we just specifically talk
Yeah.
about virtual learning and how that's impacted the way we would have normally done things. But send them the emails, attend those office hours, try to set up those one-on-ones. It is awkward over Zoom or whatever platform your university is using, but it's still, I think, important to try to create these type of connections, whether it's be with your classmates or your professors.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on that.
No, you're good. You're good. I think for me, it's just like I said with. Oh, there goes the dishes. I think with me, like I said with like the college application stuff, like I don't have much to speak into this because I don't have that experience just yet and forming those connections with professors. And I think right now I'm stressing more because I know that I could have earlier made connections, but I was just too scared to. And now it's coming back to bite me on the butt. And now I have to stress about it. But yeah. Thanks. I hope. I hope.
You got this. I believe in you.
Thanks.
You can do
Yeah. For me, yeah, I don't like thinking about those things. I mean, for me, I had the mindset like if it like whatever happens, happens. But at the same time, I know I have to try, right? But then I think I pushed it for too long. So, yeah. But on the long, that's the responsibility. So on the same lines about or same. Oh, wait, I've lost words on the same topic. I guess about responsibilities. Oh my goodness, my brain. Yeah, on the same topic of responsibilities. I think moving on to another big difference of college versus high school is that you have a lot more responsibilities than you'll think, and a lot more expectations that you did not have. So expectations as in like expectations on you, not your own expectations, such as like there's a big expectation for you to learn how to grow up and to grow up. But it's okay because everybody takes time periods to grow up. Like how long I take to grow up or learn lessons or continue to grow like is different for you. Like it's very different. Like in the ways that we grow and the ways that we mature is very different, and we need different experiences to grow. Like my experiences like might not necessarily be fit for you in learning how to grow. And there's many different ways in learning to grow up. Like for me, it was living independently for 2 years outside of home and being aware of the outside world and being independent. And then those are for my first 2 years of school, right? But then for you, like those weren't your first 2 years. Those are like different. So it's different experiences. Different experiences lead to different responsibilities, will lead to different growth. So I think one thing speaking to that, like, don't, like, it's very easy to compare, especially with like dating and like all these timeline things. Like, it's very easy to compare, but like
Yeah.
growth wise, do not compare to others, because everybody grows in different ways. Like a tree takes different time, has a different time period of growing than grass or a flower or all these things. So yeah.
Or even if you plant 2 seeds of
Yeah.
the same tree, they're not
Yeah.
always going to grow the same. They will have different timelines of when
Yeah.
they sprout and when they grow, and that's okay. And I think even, I know you said expectations that people are expecting from you, but also the expectations that you have for yourself also change. Because I know for a fact that I still maintain that same, like, I need to strive to do my best in everything. That expectation never really changed. But now I have that expectation of myself to, you know, learn more about what's going on around me, or be more aware of the things that are going around, the things going around me. Yeah, words. And be also more aware of my emotions. That's something that I've been like working on and trying to build myself up in that sense to and expectations will change. And
I think that there's just a lot more expectations that we have on ourselves when we grow older. And this isn't necessarily talking about like, oh, starting a family and all that. It's like more personal expectations. And not saying like the starting family is not personal and all that, but more,
it's more internalized expectations that you have for yourself, on how the expectations that I've set on myself are more on how I want to grow as a person, not so much as what I want to accomplish within society, but more of what I want to accomplish within myself, I guess, is one way to put it. More like, I want to strive to be a more confident person, a more, I guess, a more aware person, a more self-aware, a more just aware in general of everything around me. I've said that 5 times now. And so more internalized, and expectations on my growth, in a sense, I think is where they've been. And they're not like hard and set expectations, obviously. These are just things that I want to strive towards. And hopefully eventually I'll get there, but I'm not setting myself like a deadline, like, okay, by this age I need to be XYZ, because these aren't things that you can measure like that. Like, there's nothing that's like, okay, my confidence level is at 80% right now. Like, no, my confidence level changes every minute of every day. And so it's just more of as a whole, I want to feel XYZ. I think those are the expectations that I set on myself. And I think another difference, I don't know if you mentioned this, but also you're more accountable for yourself. No one's going to be telling you a lot of the things that you need to be doing. You're expected to keep track of your own deadlines. Like when it comes to classes, professors will hand you a syllabus. If they're nice, they'll remind you that there's a test coming up the next week. If they're not, well, they'll just hand you a paper on the test day and, good luck. It's up to you to keep track of your assignments, your deadlines, your exams. Most professors are decent. but there's always that one person who will like email you the day before, be like, hey, just a reminder, there's a test tomorrow. You have to have read these 4 chapters. Good luck. And some professors, especially after moving online, have really put that scheduling on the students themselves, where they're not really providing as much guidance as they normally would, which kind of sucks, but professors are professors and you can't really do much about it except, deal with it in your own way. And I think on that same line, you'll also be making some of the decisions yourself. What your schedule is like, what your major is, what you want to do with your major in the future, all of those decisions come onto you, and they really all happen during your college career as such. Doesn't have to be as soon as you enter or just as you're exiting, but over those 4 years, you'll be faced with a lot of big decisions that you will really need to think about before you make them.
And I think like big decisions also, like you're, like we said, like you're thinking on your own, so you don't have as many voices telling you what decisions that you can make. Like I'm still indecisive, but I think I'm more indecisive with the less voices that there are. But yeah, it comes with growing up, learning how to make those big decisions.
Yeah, and of course you always have those people who are guiding you. So we're not saying this to make it sound like you're on your own everything. No, you will still have those people in your life that are helping guide you to where you want to be, but it's up to you to think about these decisions, and the final choice is going to be yours, or it should be yours at the end of the day. You can allow other people to provide their thoughts and insight onto your decisions, but at the end of the day, it has to be
my
yours.
brain is like very distracted.
You're good. And on, I think one last note on one of the big differences between high school and college is just the overall workload. This is something that I personally thought that I would be prepared for. Coming from a high school that was always like, yeah, college will be much easier than what you're doing right now. And sure, it was for like the first semester, where like things were still okay, but the classes that I was taking were easy enough. And then as the classes got harder, I realized that, whatever the college orientation folks told us was actually true. We were told that, if we wanted to maintain a good work-life balance, we would be spending at least 3 hours for every credit hour that you took. So if you were taking a 3 credit hour class, you would be spending about 9 hours outside of class working. Wait, yes, that's how math works. Oh my gosh. Okay, if you took a 3 credit hour class, you would be spending at least 9 hours outside of that class time studying and preparing per week. Now, that has not always panned out like that. I have spent many a times of just doing like 9 hours of one class in one day because I had a test the next day. But that workload difference really is there between high school and college. I think a lot of the times my classes have not had, some have had like weekly assignments, others have not. They've just been like 4 exams or sometimes just 2 exams. That is all your grade depends upon. So it's really up to us to make sure that we're keeping up with the readings, and lectures so that we're not falling behind. And it's a lot of having to keep track of yourself and
you have to be
maintain a
more
schedule.
disciplined. Yeah.
But on the same note, even though the classes are harder, they are going to be more interesting. And you will find that the material will become more and more enjoyable, even if you still hate the fact that you have to take exams every like 4 weeks. Because I know I felt that with a lot of my classes, that I love learning about it, but the exams just take a little bit away from it. And I understand that they need exams and whatnot, but the classes, the material themselves have been quite engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I like about college is that, like in high school, we had a workload, but that workload are from things that we weren't really interested in. But then in college, like our workload are from things that we're interested because we get to choose what we do, right? So I think it makes a difference if you are interested. It makes it seem less burdensome. Yeah. But it still is a burden. But it's different because
Yeah. Like I think it's kind of along the lines of what I was saying. Like learning the material itself is nice. It's refreshing. It's very engaging. But to me, the fact that I need to take an exam afterwards really takes away from that learning experience. And that's one thing that I wish we could change, but I really don't think it's going to, because professors and institutions themselves feel the need to see how students are faring in each class. Overall, though, the classes that you take are mostly your choice. Obviously, you'll have like a degree plan that you have to pick and choose from, but your major, you will be in the major that you really want to be. And so the classes that you have to take will be of interest to you. Of course, some of the prereqs aren't going to be as great, you know. I have to take physics, and I don't like physics at all. Or there will be some classes that you just don't see the point of, that you'll still have to take. But overwhelmingly, the majority of the classes will be ones that you want to take, and you should want to learn what's going on in those classes for the sake of learning them itself. And not so much just to get through it, to graduate. Whereas I think in high school, like we mentioned before, there is a set curriculum that we all need to follow. And so we're forcing ourselves to take certain classes because we need it to graduate, and not because we want to. There are a number of classes in high school that I wanted to take, but because of lack of space, or mainly because of the lack of space in my schedule and because of the set curriculum, I wasn't able to. Now, I don't really have that problem because I have 4 years, 8 total semesters to take whatever classes I want to, as long as I'm finishing my degree in time.
Yeah, like one thing from high school that I saw is that I didn't really do good in those classes that I wasn't interested in, but like the classes I was interested in, like I said, clinicals, I'm bringing that up again. Like I studied a lot for that class because the material in that class is very interesting. Like my first year was, I think it was my first year, maybe first year. We like memorized all the bones in the body, and like that's more interesting than learning the Pythagorean theorem, or like how to find the derivative of something. Like learning how we are created is more interesting than learning how to find a solution to a math problem. And like learning about pharmaceutical stuff, and like learning how to be a pharmacy technician, like all those things, like that's so much more interesting and practical than learning like how to read into a book that doesn't need to even be overanalyzed and all of that. Why did the character eat spaghetti? What did it signify?
The red of the spaghetti signified his want for love.
There was only one meatball. What does that signify?
Was lonely.
But yeah, I think in college we get more of those worthwhile information.
But yeah, I think going back to that workload, it's important to maintain a schedule and to keep track of your things. Give yourself time the first week of classes to really look at your syllabi, study them, not in the sense of like memorize them, but like take a look at them.
Yep.
Add those dates into your planner or Google Calendar, whatever system you're using, and just keep track of yourself. Don't lose sight on what's coming up in the semester, because things will all become very hectic over midterms and final season, and you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. And I can speak from personal experience that, you know, midterm season is hard. It's not easy when you realize that like all 5 of your classes that you're taking have exams over the span of like 3 days. It's not fun. But if you've kept track of yourself and done the readings and the assignments and started studying beforehand, you'll be okay.
Yeah, I hope.
And I speak that I say that with wishful thinking, but you know,
we're already only 2 weeks into this new semester and everything's already hectic. So yeah, woo. Yeah. Oh, and I think speaking into that is like, do not overwork yourself. I think this will be, we were going to talk about this in another episode, but I guess the premise is like, don't overload yourself with too much. Because I know a friend who's taking 21 hours right now. I'm just like, why the heck do you need to be taking 21 hours right now? Like, you're not saving any money because you're going to need to take those classes anyways. And you're not saving at that much time, because what if you don't do as well as you expect in those classes? And like, they're like, you're just going to overwork yourself and you're going to burn out really easily. So like, pace yourself. Yeah.
Pace yourself, know your limits. Know your limits. And don't, I think along the same lines of don't overwork yourself. Like, learn to say no to things. Also, this doesn't really tie into.
It kind of does, really talked about, because you have the responsibility of saying no, right? Because we don't really have that many opportunities that force us to say no back in high school, but then now in college, like,
allow yourself to say no to things. If you're, I think that's like a blanket statement that can apply to any situation. Your academics and your mental health are your top priority. Everything else, your mental health is your top priority. Everything else comes secondary.
I think we're going to be talking about this next time too. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so we'll go more into that in our next episode, but as a little preview, learn to say no and know your limits so that you're not burnt out at the end of the day.
I'm writing this down as we speak, just so that we know to hit on these points more. Okay.
And I think that leads us to our last topic of conversation.
How have we... Oh, is this your question? Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so our last question is, how have we changed from when we first enter university versus now?
I think I touched on
Mm-hmm.
this a little bit earlier too, but I felt like I'm becoming more and more aware and open to new ideas and perspectives and allowing myself to see the world the way it is and not trying to put a happy sunshine rainbow sunflower blanket over
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because it's not all that. There are
Yeah.
clouds and gray skies, but that's okay, and that's a part of growing up. And I think I've also, in a very unclear sense, I have kind of figured out what it is that I want to do, but not like, hold on. There's a way that I want to phrase this, but it's not coming to me right now. So I've always had an idea of what I wanted to be, but now that it's coming closer and closer, I realize that there are more questions that I have about how I want to be what I want to be. So over the past few years, there have been so many questions that have come up that have made me question my decisions, question my choices, and I've learned to accept that it's okay to not know what's going to come next. And I know that I have a general idea that I'm working towards, but it's okay to not have every step planned out. And entering into university, I always thought that, okay, I will do step A, then step B, then step C, and I will end up at my final destination. But
Yeah,
it's a long and windy road, and none of us
a
know
lot
where
of the
it's
things that
going.
we think we are in
And
control of, we're not in control.
we're not. A lot of it just depends on the circumstances. Some things go the way that you wanted to, other things don't, and that's okay. And another thing that I have learned that just came to my mind was that I'm willing to put myself um, I'm willing to put myself forward a little bit more. I am willing to I'm still willing to apply to these things just to put my foot in the game. And I recently did that. It didn't really go through for me, but the feedback that I'm still waiting to hear, but I got like general feedback that the review panel and whatever had good things to say about my application. Like I wouldn't have known those things had I not put myself there in the first place. And that is something that one of the professors that wrote me a rec letter also mentioned, was that it's important to put yourself out there because so many people eliminate themselves from different opportunities because they're too afraid. And if you don't ever put yourself out there, you're never going to know what's going to come out of it. And I think that's one big thing that I've really developed over the years, is that put yourself out there, and whatever happens, happens. If it doesn't go well, it's okay. You haven't failed. It's just one block that you can go around through a different way and get to where you need to be. It's not a dead end. It's just you just have to make like an about turn. Not an about turn, a U-turn.
There's always an open door somewhere. And like if there's a closed door, then it's meant to be closed.
Go find another one.
So anything else to add? No, I think I think when you were saying with the first one how you're more aware of the world, like I was typing this down because I didn't want to forget it. I think one change that I've seen, or I don't think I explicitly see it. I guess I do, but I never realized it until now, I guess, is that I've now I am allowing myself more to see the brokenness in the world. And I think I have a lot of experiences for me to be able to see more of the brokenness in the world. I had a few of those experiences in high school, but not as much as I do now. Especially with with my church in high school, I was able to go to different missions trips, to different communities and different areas of the world around me, and have my eyes open to those things that if I haven't have gone to it, then I wouldn't have known, right? And I had those opportunities in high school, but I think with college, it kind of gives more leeway for opportunities to arise. I'm a part of our campus ministry called InterVarsity. And through InterVarsity, one of the big visions of InterVarsity is seeing the injustices in the world and our Christian perspective on it, and how we are supposed to be acting upon it as Christians. And I think those opportunities have allowed myself to see more of the brokenness of the world. Just through different opportunities and through these things that I've learned for the past few years, through my experiences with InterVarsity, I wouldn't have necessarily seen in high school, but at the same time, these weren't as those issues that I guess my eyes are more open to now, weren't as apparent back then, but they were still an issue, but it wasn't.
Right. It wasn't in front of you at that time.
I mean, I wouldn't say that, yes, there are a lot of issues now that are in front of me that I'm open to, but just 1 or 2 years ago, through one of the experiences that through InterVarsity, I think my freshman year, spring break, I had this chance to go to a trip to an underprivileged area out of state. And there's a lot of historical injustices that I was not aware of, right? And that's a huge thing there, and a huge thing in the whole country that I was not even aware of until then. But then now with all the issues uprising now, I have that experience to drive my perspective on that issue, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in high school I wasn't really as intentional in looking into things, or so I think that's one of the changes that, as you were talking, I was thinking about. And I think another change is that I think I'm more motivated, but I'm not motivated as much. Oh my goodness. I'm I don't even have the motivation to do schoolwork, but more motivated in the sense of I'm more passionate about what I'm doing and more passionate about what I'm studying. Even when I'm talking about my major itself, I can go on and on and on why it's so important and why I'm so passionate about it. But I will say that for a later episode or a later time. But I think I have more passions now, and I think I have more things that I can speak into. Yes. Speak about. Yeah.
Speak about.
and bring in my like more things that I can bring my perspective into, if that makes sense. Wait. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and in a sense, I feel like another change is that I've become more independent and responsible. And I think that comes with learning how to live outside of home for 2 years or a year and a half because it was cut short because of the pandemic. I keep forgetting that my sophomore year was last year and March was almost a year ago. Yeah, and another way is like I feel like I've kind of chilled out a little bit. I don't care, or I care about a lot of things, but not the same things as I did in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I agree with that too. Like, I feel like I've also, like, yes, I've become more, like, that increase in awareness of things around us has made me more, has heightened my feelings towards different things to where I'm more passionate, which stems from like my frustration or agitation towards things. But overall, like in the way that I have conversations and the way that I approach different things, it's less of a here are my thoughts and these are only my thoughts and this is all that I will say. It's more of okay, these are my thoughts, but I'm willing to listen to yours and see if I can shape my thoughts to um, see if your perspectives can be molded into mine in a sense. Like if I can mold my perspectives to if I can change my perspectives in a way to see both sides properly. So I feel like I don't want to say I'm well balanced because everyone, like, the world knows that I'm not. I'm all over the place. But I think I'm more open to seeing both sides of things, which I think in turn balances how I have a conversation. Um, at the same time, if I'm passionate about something or if I'm wanting to argue my point, I will argue to no end and I will speak with passion, which I feel like with these podcast episodes is what the side of me that you're going to see more of is the more like I really want to
Yeah.
give my thoughts on this in a very like obviously
Yeah.
this is still a conversation, but in a more
Yeah.
expressive way. That's another thing. I feel like both you and I have become more expressive of our thoughts.
Yeah.
Like we're willing to
Yeah.
share them, but not to everyone, but even amongst ourselves. Like thinking about our conversations in high school, they all were very. I think we talked about this in a previous episode too, where they weren't very deep.
Yeah.
You know, like they were more of here's what's going on in my life and I'm going to rant at you for like half an hour. Now we're able to discuss things in a way that we can actually carry a conversation. And I think that's something that I've noticed over the years with like each of my friends where we'll go into more of those deeper things because we're able to express ourselves and we are willing to express ourselves. And yeah, that's all. Because we're
And I
willing
think
to
that comes
express
with time.
ourselves.
So, like for me, I'm a pretty open and vulnerable person. Wait, is vulnerable? Yeah, pretty open and vulnerable person. So I love having deep conversations. And I think in high school, just the dynamic of our friendship didn't, or we were high schoolers, and in high school, like our high school didn't really, or we didn't really have the chance to talk deeper because we didn't have the time. Because like we didn't have
Yeah.
because we're always rushing to place, and I mean, we're still rushing nowadays, but like
Right.
going to classes and we only have like 30 minutes for
Yeah.
lunch, and like we only have all this, and like we're so busy outside of school and blah blah blah. I mean, we still are here, but
Right.
we have more
Yeah.
of a means to communicate and talk. um and like,
Yeah.
because for me, like, I have been able to have deep conversations, but I think it's just, it comes with time, and it comes with, yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm not saying that I haven't been able to have deep conversations. Like I know that I think the way I don't really know, but I feel like I've
Yeah.
become more expressive. Like I feel like I've
Mhm.
always been able to have deep conversations, but now the conversations just hit hard.
Yeah, I think.
And I think the depth of a conversation, like, or the topics
Yeah.
of our conversation have changed to where they aren't just personal, deep conversations. I think that's where the difference. I feel like in high school, any deep conversation that I had was more about like our feelings or our feelings on XYZ or how we felt about XYZ happening in our life, where I was able to open up to
Mhm.
someone about what was going on. But now I'm like, okay, I'm reading this book on addictions. Here are my thoughts on this. And I will be able to carry a conversation on that
Mm.
with a friend who has nothing to do
Mhm.
with that class. And I think that's what I mean. Like I'm able to talk about things that are more worldly. Is that the right word? I don't really know. Maybe. That aren't just
So
what's
like
happening in
more
my
of
life,
like
basically.
what's around you. Yeah.
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 Again, going back to that awareness thing, able to express that want to learn more
Mm.
and
Okay,
discuss those
sorry. I
topics.
like I think I misunderstood.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Yeah. No, yeah, you're good. But I think
Okay.
that's what I was trying to get across, where I'm able to discuss
Mm.
things that I normally wouldn't talk about when
Mm.
it comes to these conversations. Like I'll talk about the state of my world, but the state of the entire world, I
Mm.
don't think I've ever done that until like
Mm.
the
And I think that like comes with
uh,
growing up too. Like, yeah.
yes. And I think on that same note, like understanding the state of the world, um, this is slightly on a smaller scale, but like I think both of us have a better like a more of a focus on understanding on the bigger picture and not the little details of everyday life. So like when it comes to school, we continue to keep that mindset that the GPA and the grades aren't the most important things of your college life. Your college life is there for those experiences. Obviously, maintaining good grades will allow you to maintain a good GPA, but if you slip up here and there, it's okay. You don't have to have that 4.0. It it's nice to have, but if that's all that you're thinking about, then you're missing out on a whole lot of other things, I feel. Um, if you're able to do it all, good for you. I'm proud of you. But for the rest of us, um, try to focus on gaining new
Mm-hmm.
experiences, um, stepping out of your comfort zone, trying new things. Because what
Things
better
that
time than
are
now?
good for
And of
you.
course, COVID.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Don't go do anything. Do things that are good for you that will help you grow as a person. Um, yeah, good catch.
I think that's like one misconception about college. Like, oh, I get to go and try new things I've never experienced before, aka all these things that aren't good for you and for your body or for yourself in general. And
Yeah,
they kind of miss the point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And Have fun, be safe. And I know with COVID that things have changed. The way that we are experiencing a lot of things has changed. And especially for those entering college, it's a difficult time to start with a new chapter of your life. And we're all hoping that things go back to being the new normal in the near future, where we can all go back in person. But, join those clubs, make new connections, interact with your peers online, do what you can to try to make those new connections, because they really will make your college life much better.
Yeah, I think.
That's all I have.
Yeah. I think this really is going to be a 2-hour episode. I think I was just joking about it being 2 hours, but I think it's been 2 hours.
We apologize. Sorry, not sorry. This is what you signed up for. We never specified a length, so
Like just
But
like
yeah,
what we
it's anything else you
said
wanted to
in the when we're talking about point of view, y'all can like take whatever we say with a grain of salt, because like we are still learning and we're still growing, and what we say now might change a year down the road. But yeah, just take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Think about it on your own. And yeah.
Yeah. And if any of you guys listening ever have any questions or want us to go deeper into a specific topic, like our emails or any of our socials are always an open space for you guys to message us and send us any of your questions and all these things. We're here to talk.
Just like you heard dishwasher noises, washing dishes, and other people talking, it's like you guys are in our in what am I trying to say? In our life. You guys get a piece of our life. Yeah. With that, I think that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you guys for listening and spending your 2 hours. Maybe it'll be less than 2 hours with us. And yeah, catch y'all in 2 weeks, where we probably will be talking about balance. All right. Bye.
If you have any questions for us, email us at rewritethetimespodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Rewrite the Times.